Hello everyone. Thought I'd have a little bit of a chat about Salute, which I've got back from yesterday. Like last year, I went up to London, stayed up there for a sort of long weekend rather than make the journey up and back in a day. And it's definitely the best way to do it for me. It's sort of ironically, it's resulted in Salute not being the main highlight of the weekend. I find that I have a really good time just wandering around London and so on, and visiting various sites. And Salute is definitely, I don't know if I'm just getting old and jaded, but I don't get the same buzz out of Salute that I used to. It's still a good show, still worth going to, but I don't think the games that are put on are a patch on the standard of the games 10 years ago or so. They're still good and the show's still good, but as I say, I just don't get the same excitement at it. And another thing that I'm finding now is that a lot of the traders that whose products I'm interested in buying either don't go to the show at all now, more on that later, or they're very limited in what stock they take, so you always have to pre-order. They have to pay so much for their space at the show, and often their ranges are so wide that they really have to limit what they take. And to avoid disappointment, if you do want to order something from them, you have to pre-order it. And to me, that takes away half the point of going to a show. I like to go and be tempted into spending my money by buying spontaneously, or have a sort of an inkling of what I'm interested in, but to go there and to see it and make my mind up at the time. It seems to me, if I'm going to spend a lot of money to travel to the show, and living at a distance, that's what I have to do at Salute. The train fare up there is pretty excessive. Then to me, I'd much rather buy wargaming products online and pay the postage rather than buying them in advance and picking them up at the show and having to carry them home and pay the train fare on top. So I'm, as I say, maybe I'm just getting jaded, but I find that an element of Salute now that's beginning to really disappoint me. But having said all that, still definitely worth going to. Still good to meet people, bump into people, socialise, and every now and again you will see things that you've never noticed before, and there are still things to see and to do there. But for me, so what I did this year, there were a few things that I was planning to buy, only to discover that the companies weren't turning up there. I wanted to also get, and I knew they were going to be there, some more of the Krantara miniatures that I showed you some of that I painted up recently. So what I did, I bought another group of Highlanders charging, Jacobite Highlanders charging, and I also got a British infantry regiment. Because I hadn't pre-ordered it, I did put the guy under a little bit of a burden, because he had to make the units up there and then. So I sort of went away and came back about half an hour later, and he put them all together. And again, really nice, really nice. I mean, I've already praised Grand Tower to the skies on the previous video that I did about them, so I won't go into all that again. But I got exactly the same figures again. The Highlanders charging, although I did notice that he'd accidentally put one pack of Highlanders in jackets standing or advancing, but they'll be alright. I'll mix them in with the others. There's a command pack in here somewhere. This is the command pack. So you've seen all these figures before. What I'm going to do is paint them up as another clan. So I'll probably give these ones a sort of green background sort of colour to the tartans, and then I'll have two clans, slowly build up an army. But these are the British figures, and these are gorgeous, I think. So there's basically one unit, or four figures of grenadiers, and then you've got, let's take them out the back and show you that a bit more. There's a command stand. I realise I'm going to have to do something about acquiring flags for these guys. I think one of those is a flag bearer. Let's just zoom in and see if I can give you. These are at a kind of ready pose. You can get them firing, marching, or I think he described this at the ready. Yeah, at the ready. And this suits me because I find if you have them in the firing pose, the rifles projecting forwards tend to kind of catch the rank of the figures in the rank ahead of them, so it makes them difficult to kind of group together in bases. But this will be just right, and so much detail on those as well, really nice. So that was one thing I had planned to spend money on, and was very happy to get hold of those. Not sure which pack this came out of now, but let's put a look at this one. The other company that were there, and this isn't to do with figures, but I wanted to have I've been meaning to buy a holiday from them for quite some time now, and it's the Cultural Experience. They run tours based on sort of historical and military and cultural kind of themed tours. I've got the brochure here somewhere. Let's get that down and show you. And finally in a position where I can afford to go on one of these holidays. So I knew they had a stand there, so I thought I'd rather than book a holiday online, I would sort of chat to them first of all. And the one in particular that I was interested in doing is next year, in March of next year. So they've already come back from having done it this year. It's the Arab Revolt and Lawrence of Arabia. So it's a holiday in Jordan. See if I can find some pictures of it somewhere. 72. This one here. So bit of an extravagance, but I've got a year. I put a deposit down on it when I got home yesterday on Monday, but that was really my big commitment at Salute. So not figures, but something else, something a little bit different. And I've got a year now to pay off the remainder of of the price, but it did lead me on to thinking there are some quite nice figures out there for this period, and I might get into wargaming the Arab Revolt. And of course, as I say, all the companies that had products that might have interested me were absent from the show. There was Artisan Designs do a really nice Arab Revolt set of 28mm figures, and they're marketed through North Star, and I only found out by talking to Andy Lyons at Ainsley Castings that they actually were at Salute, and he said he could have got the figures for me because they tend to represent North Star at shows nowadays. But again, that would have been a case of having to pre-order. So, as I say, I try to avoid pre-ordering. So it would have meant rather than getting them in the post, I would have had to sort of go up there, pre-order them, not have any kind of opportunity to browse or anything like that, or titillate myself with the excitement of buying a new product. Just pay for them, pick them up and carry them home. So I'll get them later, get them in about a month or two. So that was the Arabs. The Ottomans, I had my eye on Woodbine Ottoman Turks. We were sold through Gripping Beast. Gripping Beast, all they seemed to have on their stand was Saga, and nothing else but Saga. Not that I object to that, I'm a big fan of Saga myself, but they don't seem to take anything else whatsoever now, because Saga is such a large element, especially with the Magic version having been released at Salute. So they concentrated on that. So I couldn't get any Ottoman Turks that I wanted, and finally Adrian's Walls, who, as you probably know, I love their buildings, and they actually have a lot of buildings that are suitable for the Arab Revolt, including one which is the pump house at Bathsheba. I know that was a conflict between the main forces under Allenby and the Ottoman army rather than the Arabs, but that would have been a building that would have been suitable. And they also do a lot of Middle Eastern style buildings that I was thinking of picking up, and they weren't there either, so couldn't look at those. I'll just have to buy them online again sometime later. But I did manage to get this Osprey book, which I was after. Give me an idea on how to paint the Turks up, the Ottoman army in 1914 to 18. I got a few other bits of literature as well. I've already purchased just about every Osprey book going for the Jacobite rebellions, so I didn't need to get any of those, but I saw this, which is from a series called From Reason to Revolution, 1721 to 1815, which is Better is the Proud Plaid, which is the clothing, weapons and accoutrements of the Jacobites in the 45 rebellion. Doesn't have a lot of colour in it, but I was particularly interested in this front cover because these are exactly the colours, especially this sort of terracotta reddish sort of colour, is exactly how I've painted up my earlier Jacobite Highlanders, and this greenish sort of colour is what I'm planning for the next unit, so that caught my eye immediately. But there's a lot of detailed writing in here, so that's fine by me. Not much in the way of colour prints to give you any painting ideas, but all the same, really useful book to get hold of, I think. There's that front cover picture again, slightly bigger scale. A couple of other, and that's about it. That's about all the colour plates you get, but that's fine. And I also got this one here, which is from partisan historical books, Cumberland's Army, the British Army at Culloden. I have taken this out of its cellophane wrap, but I won't do it again. But again, not much colour in here. It's nearly all black and white, but it's still going to be a useful book to go and get on with. And I have, as I say, I have got a lot of Osprey books, so that was just sort of an incidental find. I had a look. I've told you before that I was interested in the forthcoming release of the Korean War supplement to Bolt Action, and they had a draft copy of the rules on their stand, so I stood reading that for quite a while, and that looks as though it's going to be very interesting. And they also had some future figure releases and so on that they're going to bring out, but I'm going to be playing it in 20mm with my 20mm armies, so wasn't so interested in that. But the rules themselves look as though they're going to be very good. And then as the sort of day went on, I began to kind of as the crowds began to kind of diminish, I began to find it much easier just to get to the stands and idly browse, and I found quite a lot of things that tempted me that, you know, sort of wouldn't otherwise have thought of purchasing. So I found a company called Bear's Head. Just noticed on here that I wonder if that's a mistake. They've got their website as www.beesheadminis, but their name is actually Bear's Head Minis, so that might be a typo. They do a lot of kind of fantasy style animals that I'm not interested in at all, but they had a really splendid grizzly bear, and unfortunately they'd sold out by the time I got to them. So I've actually sent an order off for that, but what I did pick up were some Highland cattle, which again I thought would be suitable for the Jacobite Rebellion and other periods as well. So these are quite nice beasts. There's a calf there. And I also got this stag, which the antlers come separate, so just to give you a sort of very rough idea of what it looks like. But really sort of impressive figure of a stag there. And I don't know what I'm going to use that for. It could just be decorate the table, maybe, or could fit into a Highland setting. And I also ordered, when I went to their website, they had quite an interesting wild boar as well, so I thought, oh, in for a penny, in for a pound, and I bought that online as well. But that's the kind of thing that shows can be good for, is just seeing things that you're not familiar with. So that's, as I say, that might be a typo, but that might worth investigating. Bear's Head Miniatures, and they've got their website as www.beesheadminis.com, but that might well be a typo, and it's bearsheadminis.com. Another thing I saw that had sold out as well was Sally Forth. Had a lovely set of various items made in resin for an Arab souk. So I thought that would fit into the Arab Revolt. So I've made an online purchase of that. And then finally, another thing I just sort of saw caught my eye, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll get some of these for my samurai games. These will look really good on that samurai mat I got from Tiny War Games. There are a whole load of different types of garden ornaments and lanterns and so on. I forget what they're all called. But they're rather nice, I thought. This one's called a Yukimi, which is another kind of lantern. When I saw this, it reminded me of one I have actually seen in a garden in Japan. Yeah, I'm not going to do a very good job of putting that together on camera. You don't get much of an idea from top down, but that's what that one looks like. There are these four, which are small Yukimi. So these are a similar kind of lantern to the last one, only a little bit smaller. Lots of tidying up to do on them, sort of flash or whatever you want to call it. But I thought they'd make a nice little addition to my Japanese war games. And these ones as well, very never seen anything like these before. If we can get them out of the packet. So these sort of bow over, but they stand up fine. They don't need to be based or anything. They did actually do a type of lantern that I've already got, that you could buy with a little miniature light bulb in, so that it would actually light up. But you needed to order those. They didn't have them available at the show, and I thought, as I've got some that are similar anyway, I didn't go for it. And then once you made a purchase, they had a whole box of rejects and things like that, so they just allow you. I was quite sparing and only grabbed this, but they had a whole literally, you could take a handful of them if you wanted. Still, they described them as miscasts and rejects, but I couldn't see any fault with this. This is a sort of paper, one of those paper lanterns, so it would hang on the eave of a house or something like that, or an inn. And I said to him, what's wrong with that? It looks fine to me. And he said, oh, it's probably one of a pair and the other one's got lost or something. So they gave me that for free, so I was quite pleased with that. And apart from all the freebies and things, which I'm sure most of you have probably seen on other people's videos and things, that was everything that I got. But yeah, I had a good time. As I say, you know, had I not changed to staying up in London for a few days and having a really, you know, good time doing other things as well, you know, I'm probably would say that Salute isn't on it in its own isn't enough to draw me down to London from Plymouth any longer. But as part of a kind of little mini break, it's a nice little enjoyable thing to do. And then saw quite a few YouTubers. I didn't linger very long. I bumped into them by accident, so I hadn't realised, but they were all congregating at a certain time in the centre of the arena, and I just happened to be walking past and met a lot of them. But I bumped into Gary later on, so I had a bit of a longer chat with him. And then on the Sunday, I'd arranged to meet Nigel from Darkling of Eldridge. We met up at the London Museum and had a few hours chat, strolling around bits of the East End and so on afterwards. It was nice to see him. And wargaming related, that was more or less everything I did over the weekend. So that's my little update finished. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Bye for now.